Awesome. Hey, everybody. What's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Boiler Express podcast. Tonight, we are a shell of our normal crew tonight, but coming at you with Frank the Stat Tank, myself, Damon, as always, um, tonight. And we're here to talk a little bit about the Big Ten tournament. Honestly, I feel like it's a pretty, consensus thought that across the board that we're not really sweating the Big Ten tournament too much. I know a lot of people wanted us to beat Wisconsin. I think everybody, obviously you want to see a win, but at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. Obviously, didn't play too much into our seeding in the tournament. We still came out with a 1 seed in the Midwest region. So playing Friday in Indianapolis against either Grambling State or Montana State, which I believe they play Thursday. And then we'll play the winner of that on Friday. So lots to talk about. I tweeted earlier today, welcome to group therapy, because that's honestly what this is going to be. Frank and I were talking before. It's March, it's tournament time. We're nervous. Even though there's a lot of data and there's a lot of things to back up Purdue's success in this tournament this year, there's also a lot of just unknowns. I mean, in the tournament's just kind of a crapshoot. Honestly, you just never know what's going to happen, especially like Frank said before when you get to that Sweet 16. So, um, so yeah, Frank, just to kind of jump into that, what were your thoughts? Just to talk about a little bit, what were your thoughts on the Big Ten tournament and just how everything played out?
Yeah, I thought it was a really entertaining tournament overall. But as far as Purdue goes, I mean, I thought the first game against Michigan State was an absolute grinder, like
Mhm.
I anticipated it would be. I think Michigan State's a good team. I know they're kind of a controversial draw. A lot of people thought they shouldn't have made the tournament, and we can have that debate all night. But I think that Michigan State's a good team, and I think that Purdue did a really good job playing them. They got out in transition a little bit more than I would like to see. Um, Obviously, I think the big storyline of that game was Braden, going down and grabbing his knee, and the fear that every Purdue fan felt. I wasn't able to watch that game, like actually pay attention to it. It was on in the background, but I was pretty tied up because it was at noon
Mhm.
on a weekday, and like a lot of people, I had to work, so it was on, but I was focusing on doing a lot of work stuff. It was kind of over my shoulder, but yeah, when that happened, I was immediately felt sick to my stomach, and shades of past seasons, were washing over me. But it was good to see him get back on the court. Um, Damon, I'd like to get your opinion. How do you think Braden looked against Wisconsin? They said he was 100%. I know Painter said he got two independent opinions about how Braden looked, and he basically said if you're not 100% certain that he looks good, then he's not going to go. And they both said he looks 100%. But I didn't. I felt like he looked a little bit slower, and
Yeah.
I didn't feel like he was favoring a leg, but he's just a little bit slower.
Well, and even a couple times in the second half, I think it was the second half, or in the first half as well. There's a couple times where he had picked up his pivot foot and had traveled a few times, and that's not like him.
Mhm.
I believe it was on that same leg that he hyperextended his knee. I've heard that he hyperextended his knee. I also heard it was a calf muscle or a calf strain injury.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the hyperextension of the knee pulled the calf
yeah,
because the calf connects to the back. I think is what happened.
actually, that's true. I just remember that there was a guy that he's a doctor in sports medicine had commented on my post that I was like, do these things connect? Like, how does that all work together? And he was like, yes, they do. And he like used all of his big medical terminology. Um, so yeah, they that all connects together. But I mean, yeah, he looked. I mean, he's a great point guard, but he looked. I mean, I personally wish, which also this was divisive too, and I didn't think this would be a divisive thing. I wish he would have sat. I wish he would have just like took it easy, rested. Got taken care of. Which I know that they got a lot of opinions, and obviously Painter wouldn't put him out there if he wasn't 100% sure that he could go. But I think in the big grand scheme of things, it would have been great to just see him, relax, take it easy. But apparently, a lot of people on Twitter were very divisive on like Painter or Braden sitting, Braden playing. It was like a lot of people were calling the Purdue fans soft, like, oh, everybody's having a meltdown because he got injured. And yeah, I just thought that was kind of wild. Did you see any of that on Twitter?
Yeah, I did, and it's definitely a difficult situation because we've talked about it on here. How much does the selection committee uh, like how much merit do they give to these conference tournaments effectively? We saw Tennessee lose their first game, and they dropped from the last number one seed to the second number two seed. So the
Mhm.
selection committee is obviously, giving some merit to what happens in these conference tournaments. And so, if you sit Braden, and then UNC goes on to win, maybe someone on the 1-2 line goes on and continues and wins out in their tournament. Do you risk losing a seed? So would you rather risk Braden's injury and go into the tournament, let's say at worst the last or the first number two seed, let's say,
Mhm.
but not have Braden? Like I think I was in the camp of like this game doesn't matter. Despite what some people think, the Big
Mhm.
Ten championship and the Big Ten tournament championship are not the same thing, just to be clear about that. But I think that if you were to ask any player, any coach, any fan, would you rather have Braden in that game and potentially risk injury, or save him for the big dance? I think most people, I would think, would say save him for the dance. But whether or not that makes someone soft, I'm not really sure. But we saw him tweak his ankle in the last home game against Wisconsin. We saw the same thing with Edie. I think people were saying, just go ahead and sit him regardless, even before that knee injury. But I did see that, and I'm not a. I just thought it was all silly. It's amazing how we're all united, in our love for Purdue and Purdue sports. Yet we disagree so much about the tiniest things. But there's a lot of criticism for a lot of things. I think one of the things was the putting Edie on the inbounder at the end of regulation and not under the basket, and I don't disagree with that call. I think, given the personnel Wisconsin had, as Painter said in the press conference, that it made the most sense. I think that Wisconsin looked to exploit Braden's kind of lack of mobility at the very end there. Like Chucky Hepburn blew right by him. And I think overtime favored Purdue, honestly, given that, one of their bigs was already fouled out and the other two each had four. We just weren't able to capitalize. But at the end of the day, I think I would rather the team have the rest before the big dance. And honestly, that like you want to think that like one more loss will humble you a little bit and make you a little bit more hungry. And I hope that's the case, that they can just carry that momentum forward.
Yeah, and I think even Nick in our group chat was saying that he watched the video of like the guys in the locker room after the game, and he's like, it did not look at all like they were phased by that loss. They were definitely looking forward or ahead to the tournament because their goal that they've said, multiple times this year is they want to bring a national championship to Purdue, which, dude, that gives me so much goosebumps, just goosebumps, man. And you just want it so badly. For lots of and for different people, it's going to be different reasons, man. And I think we talk ourselves into that every year that Purdue has a really good team, and we go into the tournament, we're like, oh, this could be the year, this could be the year. Um, but gosh, I just want it so bad, for Coach Painter, for Coach Katie, for players, past and present. It just feel like it would just vindicate and just like break this curse that Purdue's had, and it would just be so just. I feel like West Lafayette would literally flip upside down. I don't even know. I can't even. Chris would be working overtime for a while.
Yes, you would. When
Yeah.
what maybe not you personally, but what happens? Or okay, let me back up here. Um, what is the minimum? How far does Purdue have to go this season before the fans as a whole, not you, not me, just the fan base as a whole says, okay, I'm content with how this season goes?
Well, that's
Is
hard
it?
because the loudest people on social media are the ones that are, only going to be happy if we make at least the Final Four.
Yep.
So it's hard to speak for the entire fan base because all of the parts of the internet that you and I are both in are the Purdue nerds, the diehards, who are, that's what they want. They want Final Four or bust. Which I get. We have a two-time National Player of the Year on our team. We've got two All-Americans on our team as well. There's absolutely, and everything just seems like it's lining up. Like Fletcher's shooting pretty well, knock on wood. Um, you know,
Gillis
uh,
is playing the best basketball probably of his career, in my
right.
opinion.
And
Yeah.
he's been hitting some clutch shots, like in the most key of moments, hitting a three to extend Purdue's lead, in towards the end of games. And so I think that, Yeah, it's a hard question to answer just because, the majority of people on the internet are the diehard fans that want the Final Four. So I'm going to say Final Four.
Mhm.
I think people would be happy with Elite Eight, but I don't think that they would be content with an Elite Eight run. I think they want like a Final Four or bust. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement. I think that Final Four is probably the minimum that Purdue could do, and not have people not see this season as a failure. You
Hmm.
know, we got a comment here from Cody. Natty's the expectation.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is like the fan base as a whole, not necessarily any one person's opinion, but
right.
I mean, and I remember walking out of the Purdue Virginia Elite Eight game, walking out of the stadium and hearing like people say, this is as far as we'll ever get with Painter and stuff like that,
Wow.
and I can't help but think that let's say it's an Elite Eight or a Final Four, and then we get to the Final Four, we lose, that talk's going to come right back, and I want to be proven wrong. Like, don't get me wrong, I want to be proven wrong, but um, it's just it's easy to overlook the luxury we have
Mhm.
in Matt Painter. It really is, and you can look at schools who thought they could do better. Not to knock on IU too hard, but they fired a guy who was getting them pretty consistently to the tournament, and they felt like they could go further. And then they brought in Archie Miller, who had slightly less success, and it's a slippery slope. Look at Louisville, for example. They
Yeah.
fired a guy who had a number one ranked team, and now they're the laughing stock of the ACC, and so there's just we tend to overlook how
It's
good of
a
a job Painter's done.
it's a very fine line that you toe with your expectations, where you where the team is at currently, and where you think they could go with somebody else. It's a very
Yep.
fine line that you have to toe, because the grass that's proven quite consistently is not always greener on the other side. In fact, it's usually a lot shittier. Um, and not and I'm not saying this at all to put with people would call for Coach Brom's head all the time, after going 8-4, 9-3, making it to the or 9-4, making it to the Big Ten championship. Nobody but during that run, if we lost the game, it was like, oh, Coach Brom is back to his old roots again. Here we go. And it's like, what. And not saying that Coach Walters isn't that guy. He absolutely could be. He could be a great fit. But sometimes when you make those transitions, there's growing pains, and unfortunately, IU is just still there. I mean, there's not really a lot of growth. They've honestly just gotten worse, it seems like, ever since Crean got the boot. But yeah, it's such a fine line, because people would say, like, if I don't even want to say it. I don't even. Let's just say if Purdue lost early in the tournament this year, I think a lot of people, even though you look at the body of work, a 29-4 year, back-to-back Big Ten champs, back-to-back National Player of the Year on the team, I think there would be people out there that would be like, this guy can't do it anymore in March. Like, we need to find somebody else new. And everybody would say, is who in the world would you replace Matt Painter with? And I think the answer is like, there's no good answer. So
Very, very few. Like there are very few coaches who I would see as a suitable replacement for Painter, just
right.
culturally in terms of what people excite. Because I hear some coaches in press conferences, and I'm just like, man, I'm so glad we have Painter. They don't say stupid
Mhm.
things like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's a comment here. Did you guys see McCullough Jr. was out for Kansas? I did see that. And it's interesting because that's already starting up the conversation, and that like the road is paved for Purdue.
That's
Like,
exactly what I was saying.
yeah, that's exact, and we're
uh,
already hearing that, just like we saw 2 seasons ago in the Sweet 16 loss to St. Peter. The road is paved. It's golden, and
it really
I think
was.
was it Baylor lost. They were upset, and just
Kentucky lost to St. Peter's.
yeah, the road is paved, and so that's what people are already saying. From the sound of it, it sounds like you could shove Hunter Dickinson with a level 5 out of 10 effort, and he would probably re-injure himself. They're scotch taping him together,
Mhm.
so he's there sounds like he's going to play, but he may not be 100%, and far from it, from what it sounds like. The Midwest region is wide open now. Got another comment. Yeah, that's That's the narrative, at least. That's what
And you
they're.
know what is really sick and twisted? Because the committee had the chance to do this and they didn't. They could have very well made St. Peter's a 16 seed that Purdue had to play
Yeah,
in the first round. But what's really sick and twisted is if somehow they, they get some fairy dust and go on a crazy run, they could. You imagine Purdue versus St. Peter's in the Final Four? Could you imagine? Because they're in the same bracket. They're the 15th seed, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
They play Tennessee in their first game,
I just
which
I don't even know what I would do.
can you imagine another game against Tennessee? That's just ugh. I
Oh
mean,
no, and then
Purdue has had Tennessee's number in all sports in recent years. And I would love to have that game settle the who is the national player of the year debate that has been
mm,
going on among fans for a long time now. It's Dalton Connect. Well, he didn't show up in the Big Ten or the SEC tournament, but not saying he's not a great player. I'm sure he's a fantastic player and he'll have a long NBA career. But I would
yeah,
just love to see that again.
and it's like
Um,
I don't disagree with people that he's probably more exciting to watch, more fun to watch because Zach Edey is your old school, center, your big bully in the paint that can, do his will down there. So it's not the most exciting thing to watch, dunks and, you know, uh, uh, little 2 foot jumpers, but it's efficient. It works. It's,
Free throws.
yeah.
Everyone's upset about free throws.
But they also I think it was Paul Branham maybe on Twitter made a big post about how coaches willingly say like we don't have a guy that can match up to Zach Edey, so we have to game plan to foul the crap out of him because these refs won't call everything, and then it turns into a free throw fest. And
Mhm.
we'll talk about how that hurts the game, and it's like Purdue fans don't necessarily want to see just free throws all the time either, but it
Nope.
also it is what it is because that's how coaches are game planning Zach Edey because there's nothing else that they can do because they don't have somebody to match his caliber of play.
Yeah, I would love Damon if everyone decided to play him one on one and did it without fouling. Like that would be a very entertaining game for me to watch.
That'd be awesome.
But I think I mean there was a post on Reddit the other day and it just said that Purdue is the most unwatchable brand of basketball because it's just a free throw fest the entire time and it's like, well, I mean that I we're not asking for that. It's like Brad Underwood, Chris Collins both said this season that like their goal was to foul Zach Edey. So you foul him,
Mhm.
that's what's going to happen. I mean, so it's like you said, we're not asking for this. We're not hoping that people go and foul him. In fact, we're hoping that they play him one on one so we can just score right over him. That's that's it.
Right.
But interesting comment here. Purdue versus Virginia in the Elite Eight needs to happen. Poetic. Yeah, I agree.
Mm.
That'd be pretty crazy.
Okay, yeah. So I was sorry, this is back to the free throw comment. I was looking at because I saw Anish from Boiled Sports had made a post a few days ago about because somebody was harping on like Purdue is just free throws and blah blah blah. It's so boring to watch. Um, he put this post out there that says Purdue isn't in the top 50 in free throws per game and is 180th in free throw percentage. Edie goes to the line because teams hack him. I'm not sure what everyone else is complaining about except to hear themselves complain. And then he showed a graphic too where it backed up his stats that he used in that. So um, yeah. So it's and also isn't Terrence Shannon Jr. doesn't he go to the foul line a lot more than
Yeah,
Zach Edey?
I think it's like 8 or 9 times per game. The last time I checked. So I'm pulling up some numbers associated with that, so we can actually let's see free throws. Yeah, free throw attempts per game. Yeah. So when we look at the teams who attempt the most free throws per game, I mean Purdue's not even on the first page. So, oh yes, they are. Sorry, I just missed them. So, one, two. Purdue is 12th in
Okay.
free
Who's
throw
number
attempts per
one?
game at 25, the 98th percentile. So, Winthrop shooting 27 per game. No one's out there saying, "Hey, like I can't stand watching Winthrop basketball." Arkansas, who actually had a losing record this season, 16 and 17, shoots more free throws per game than Purdue. Only one, but
They
so
beat
it's
us in
like
one area this year.
Yeah, and that's so as we see, that's not, this recipe for winning and success as we see. Otherwise, Arkansas would have a great record. And but lo and behold, when we look at the top 15, another team is on there, and that's Illinois. 23 and a half free throws attempts per game to produce 25. So
Right.
Purdue attempts 1.5 more free throws per game than Illinois, but yet Purdue plays this unwatchable brand of basketball that is just
Which
painful and terrible. And I personally don't like to watch a bunch of isolation plays over and over again. That's just me. That's my
right.
personal opinion. One
And
way
what
is not right or wrong, but
and
that's
what
every.
and what this says to me too is that, if the game plan is to just foul and hack Zach Edey, or like towards the end of the game, we're just gonna foul you because we're just gonna hope that you hit one out of two of these free throws, or miss the first one, and then we get the rebound. To me, that says how much you're not only like you don't have a game plan for Zach Edey, but it also tells me that you're also afraid of what our other players can do, because you would rather just send Zach Edey to the free throw line than, you know, let Mason Gillis get the open three, or Fletcher Lawyer take the open three, or Braden Smith get a three, or drive to the lane, or whatever it is. So,
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. Couple comments here. Are Braden and Zach confirmed 100% at this point from these last few tweaks? No, I mean in the interviews and like the media day stuff, they said they were fine. I don't think they would say anything otherwise, right? I think both those guys are pretty competitive and want to get out on the court. So I don't think we would hear anything otherwise if they weren't. But I'm gonna assume that, and this is purely a hunch. This isn't like backed by any fact, but I would assume they're going to be good to go by game time. And worst case scenario, they're like 85%. I think Braden was a little more affected by his calf than what he let on. Got an interesting comment here. Fletcher is second on the Purdue team in free throw attempts this season. Zach Edey has missed more free throws than Fletcher has taken. Yeah, I mean that's great, and it
uh,
is I think about Fletcher. He's gotten fouled on a lot of 3-point shots this season. He's gotten pretty good at getting that call. But yeah, I mean, one thing you talked about, Damon, is just that everyone seems to be kind of clicking right now. And it seems like Braden's going to do his thing, Zach's going to do his thing, Gillis is going to be good for two or three threes, and then pick one of two between Lance Jones and Fletcher. Like there's just not enough points to go around, for all
right.
those guys. But that just kind of seems to be how things have settled in. But one guy we haven't talked about was the pleasant surprise to see Miles Colvin get some extended minutes in
Mhm.
both the Wisconsin game at the end of the season and then the Big Ten tournament. How
And
do you
if
think he looked?
Well, I'm not gonna lie to you. I didn't really. I guess the times that I was watching the game, he wasn't in, because I was kind of hit or miss, being able to watch the games as well. But I will say, and I'm, also a person that's silently in this camp sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be honest here about Painter having a death grip on his lineup that gets smaller and smaller and smaller as you get closer to March. He's playing a freshman in the Big Ten tournament. Like, obvious, that I think that, there's some merit to that he is willing to see what works. And there can be other reasons in there that Colvin played a lot more minutes. It could be, he wanted to give Braden a break. It could be, for whatever reason. But it's cool to see guys get in there and play, some minutes. Like, even Camden Heidi. Like, I know he's not playing a ton of minutes, but just seeing him consistently in the rotation, and it's not like this 9-10 man rotation that shrinks down to 6 when it comes to March, is really nice to see. But as far as like Colvin goes, I didn't get to see it, but I saw like comments, online and stuff about like he had some great moments, but also he showed streaks of being a freshman that's not played a ton this year. So
Yeah, I think so. We do have a comment here. His defense has improved greatly, and I do agree with that. You know, I hadn't seen enough of a sample size in terms of his minutes to really get a feel for how good his on-ball defense was. But early in the season, his off-ball defense was a problem, just to put it bluntly. But he seemed to definitely improve in that area. He had a really nice block. I felt like in the Wisconsin game, he was kind of hunting shots a little bit and sort of took some bad shots, and then that kind of quickly went away. But in the game against Michigan State, he played within the flow of the offense. Defensively, he was pretty solid. There was a couple miscues. Luckily, we were able to scramble out of it. But I felt like as a whole, he looked really good. And I know there's been some criticism on various forms of social media, and that he may not be ready to go this time of the season or this time of year. Had Painter played him more, he would have been an actual weapon. So there's some criticism there, and interesting comment here. We're basing that defense off one game. I agree it looked better, but it still looks lost off ball on both sides of the court. Yeah, the off ball defense was really the biggest problem that I saw earlier in the season, and I felt like his on ball defense was good, but like I said, I haven't really gotten a feel for how good his on ball defense is. And we're getting all sorts of comments. He still looks a little lost out there when rotations start happening, but he's getting better at recovering. Biggest room for improvement, in my opinion, is finding a man and boxing out. Yeah, I haven't studied the tape of him as in depth. I actually need to go back and rewatch those games. I
And
did rewatch
honestly,
the Michigan State game, but rewatch it with a little bit more.
and honestly, though, to the people that are saying like, "Oh, if Painter would have played him more, he'd be like night and day at this point of the year." I feel like that's also a lot of you have pretty high expectations for a player to develop that much in the span of November, December, January, February, March. In 5 months, you expect a player to develop that much in 5 months. That sounds just kind of ludicrous to me. Like
Yeah, when I
maybe some improvement, over time, but I think the off season is where he's going to improve the most. And when they go internationally to play in these tournaments and things like that, that is where you'll see that improvement because he's going to get a ton of minutes in that time.
Yeah, and
And
I think Painter's a pretty blunt guy, and we've heard him say it, we've heard former players say it, that he never lies and he's always going to give it to you straight. And so I think that when we started to see Colvin's minutes dwindle, that he was pretty straightforward with him and said, "Hey, man, you got to get better on defense." Like,
yeah,
so I'm sure he's been working on that, but it was interesting because we hadn't seen him play a ton. Um, I felt like he looked bigger, like he looked stronger. He looked like he put on a little bit of muscle. Maybe that's my mind. If anyone else agrees or disagrees and wants to comment on that, I would love to know. But comment here: I think Painter needs to make quick decisions about swapping Lawyer out with Heidi if he begins to struggle.
I don't know.
So I'm curious if you mean offensively, defensively, or both. But yeah, I mean, it's Purdue has a really deep team, and one thing we've seen is Morton's minutes kind of start to dwindle a little bit, and
Yeah,
I think some of that could be due to the offensive liability that he has kind of become. But he looked good. He looked confident hitting that shot, that mid range against Michigan State. Like he didn't think about it, just pulled right up and it went in. So that was good to see. But it is nice to have such a diverse team in terms of
and since we're on the topic of like player development and growth, I think I love seeing the comments. Well, some of them have been pretty terrible, honestly, as far as like bad, in poor taste about how, after this year, thank the Lord, we can all go rest at night because Zachy is going to be gone or he'll be over in another country playing. And I'm not going to say exactly what those tweets have said, but if you all are watching this show, you probably know exactly what tweets I'm talking about. That are just kind of derogatory. But I feel like a lot of people forget that we've got a guy who's 7'2" that is just waiting for his time to shine, and we're also bringing in a guy who's 7'3" next year, who just in at least some forms or at some rankings, he shot up from like 123rd overall to 68th. And Daniel Jacobson, so that 4-star center that we've got coming in from Wisconsin. We've got Will, who is William Berg, who is, I don't know. I don't know a lot about William Berg, but it is really cool to see him, like his practice clips that he'll post on Twitter where he's just draining threes. That would be great to have a 7'2" center that can pull up from three, because he looks like he has a pretty nice shot. So
yeah, he does. And I believe that's the same clinic, I guess I'll call it, that Gillis spent a lot of time at this past summer. And we've seen what they were able to do with him, and his shot. I mean, he that was a big question mark last season for me, was why isn't Gillis hitting shots? And I don't know if it was just, I mean, that was just as a whole, that was a big question mark last season, which thankfully has resolved itself this season. But yeah, it's been really cool to see Gillis kind of fall into this role, right, where he's coming in off the bench and he's a huge threat, and also see Painter running plays for him to run
Mhm.
that horn Swiss kind of roll replace action that gets Gillis an open shot or gets Edey a one-on-one touch. It's kind of a pick your poison play that we get into it a few different ways. That's really cool. But I like. I mean, like I said, I think Gillis is playing the best basketball of his career. I mean, he rebounds with authority. He does everything you need to do. And I don't know, Damon, if you saw or heard the clip where I forget the guard's name from Michigan State who stepped up to Zach Edey, right? And Gillis just kind of gets in there and you know there wasn't really much going on, you know, like it didn't look like a fight was going to break out, but Painter's just screaming for Mason Gillis on the sideline to get back because I guess he was worried about what he might do,
Well,
which I just
didn't he
thought was
make a comment
hilarious.
earlier this year that Mason would rather fight than talk to somebody?
Yeah, he did. Which I don't know if Mason just hates fighting or if
Or
or
you
I'm
mean
sorry, he
talk?
just hates talking or just loves fighting or a little bit of both. Um, Neither would surprise me, to be honest with you, just given the like demeanor and body language that I'm able to kind of ascertain from him as a whole. But
All right. I mean, I remember what his elbow did to David Jenkins Jr. in practice a couple of
yeah,
was that last year. Yeah,
ooh,
last year. I remember
yeah,
that huge black eye that David Jenkins Jr. had, and he had it for a while too, from
yeah.
just
I
touching his
remember they
elbow in
showed it on
practice.
TV, and it was like questionable as to whether or not you should be allowed to show that on TV. I mean, it was like, oh, like that looks terrible. Yeah, that was crazy,
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. But just temperature check, Damon. Like, how you feeling? You feeling good? You feeling anxious? You feeling like
So there's a
just
lot of things that I'm feeling. I think that there was some. I don't know if you want to even call it concern. I just didn't think we played our best in the tournament, and I know like it's the Big Ten tournament, so it doesn't necessarily matter. But I think you always want to see your team playing their best as you go into March Madness. But then again, what do I know? Because Purdue lost to Minnesota in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, and then Carson Edwards went off for 4 games straight, and we almost made it to the Final Four. So and then there's also just the anxiety of it all, man. It's March. This is like the time to nut up or shut up. Purdue, for Purdue to do that. So lots of feelings, man. But I'm excited. Because I feel like this could be this could be it. But also scared about what if it's not. Which obviously the sun will rise again and life will go on. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's a whirlwind of emotions. I think everybody's feeling that this week. Everybody is you know uh wants Purdue to do it. It's a long time coming. A lot of really great Purdue teams have knocked on that door. They've gotten so close, but they just haven't made it there yet. And I want to break through that ceiling, whatever it takes. I know that's kind of the mantra going into this season. Which I don't know if you're watching this and you've not seen the hype video for the tournament that Purdue Creative made, go and watch it. I think it was clips from like voice or audio from like what the Avengers, I think, probably. But um, gosh, it was good. So yeah, I'm just kind of all over the place, to be honest with you. What about you?
yeah. I mean, this is the time of year where I wonder why I get so emotionally involved in this kind of stuff because I just it's just like it's just kind of lingering. It's like man, tournament's coming up. Like there's like a potential for a lot of strong emotion, positive, negative, somewhere in between. But I'm to touch on what you said in terms of how they looked in the Big Ten tournament. It's yeah, we like Purdue played two really good teams, two tournament teams. In the Big Ten tournament, and people say, well, UConn walked through their tournament. Well, there were only three teams in the Big East that made the tournament.
Right.
They've been saying it all season. The Big East is fairly weak, and I think that kind of goes to show that, yeah, it was. Houston lost. Tennessee lost their very first game. I mean, just
Houston got whipped.
yeah, they did, and but I think even looking at Illinois, and I'm not speaking negatively about Illinois, but they were down double digit points in every game in the Big Ten tournament and came back and won. So the Big Ten is stronger than I feel like what people give it credit for, and
Mhm.
we put a lot of merit into the idea of wins and losses, and as we should, but. When you think about a team like Michigan State, they've lost a ton of two possession games that they easily could have won. Purdue last year is like another good example of that. Purdue won several coin flip games last season. You think about the win at Ohio State, where Ethan Morton got the steal at the very end and Fletcher hit the three, and the win at Nebraska, for example, and Maryland at home. And yeah, there's just a ton of games that Purdue easily could have lost. And so there are some teams in the Big Ten that just unfortunately were on the losing side of those types of games all season. So, I'm not concerned about the Big Ten tournament. I'm feeling pretty good as a whole, which kind of leads me into the thing I think we want to talk about some, and that's the field, the Midwest bracket, and kind of how we feel about that. So does it seem like a good time to kind of segue into that?
Yeah, one more thing though is that, and just one more thought on how I'm feeling is that I think it was Raphael Davis that said it's tough to win in the Big Ten, but then the Big Ten, the how you play in the Big Ten doesn't always translate to the tournament. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out this year. I know that Purdue is overall playing a lot better defensively than they have, I would say, in the last couple of years. So that's great to see. But and like Chris was saying in the group chat today, hopefully that kind of takes even a step up during the tournament. So yeah, I'm just going to be interested to see how Big Ten basketball translates to the tournament this year, and maybe some Big Ten teams can make their
Yeah,
strides.
I think that one thing I will say, and we're going to welcome in Russ here, by the way, who's just appeared. But I think one thing to say about that is that I feel like this season, right, when you look at Mike Rhodes and what he's done at Penn State and the type of basketball they're playing, and you look at Kevin Willard, at Maryland, who they really struggled early, but they've been playing some really good basketball. There's a little bit more diversity in terms of the play style in the Big Ten, and I like that. I like that for
Yeah.
that reason. Um, there's a comment here, which Russ, maybe I'll let you address this comment here since you're just now joining us. But the comment is, I've seen a lot about Purdue's inability to step on teams' throats when the game gets close. So I'm assuming the game's close and just pull away, right? Is what I'm
I feel like
assuming.
they've had a lot of games where they've done that this year, like especially that whole beginning of the year tournament where they played 3 back-to-back ranked really
Yeah,
good
I mean,
teams.
Purdue is down at halftime against Gonzaga, and pulled away in that one, a 10-point win. Purdue Tennessee was kind of close the entire time. They pulled away there at the very end. Marquette, they had a big lead against, like a 10-12 point lead. Marquette came back. Purdue ended up getting the win. I really feel like Purdue definitely did that against Arizona for the most part. Like
Yeah.
it was close, and then we had like those 3 turnovers in a row. We scored off of all 3 of them, and like never really looked back from there. The zone kind of had Purdue a little iffy there for a little while. Illinois, Purdue had a huge lead against Illinois at home, and they did come back. But
At
I mean,
Illinois,
yeah, at Illinois we got that one.
at
Maryland,
Wisconsin.
at Maryland, Purdue got an early lead and never let up on that one. I mean, I guess if you're particularly talking about the end of the season, Rutgers at home, that was a game where Purdue got up early and didn't look back. Michigan on the road, you could argue that one. Michigan State, we kind of gave up in a late lead, but I don't know. I feel like it's kind of been up and down in terms of as it's been phrased, stepping on throats. But Russ, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know how well this is going to work because I'm working on hotel Wi-Fi here, but
No,
I'll
you
probably
sound
give
good.
it a shot. Hop in here. I think it's got to be talked about too. We have like 4 or 5 wins this year where we were trailing at halftime. So I know that's not the stepping on throats thing, but it also shows the second half resolve that we've had at different times this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in college basketball is just competitive. Like it's a lot of stacked teams in the Big Ten, and there's a very small margin between the starting lineup of Penn State and the starting lineup of Purdue outside of, probably Zach Edey and maybe Braid, but like those guys are studs. Like you saw with Ohio State knocking us off this year. That wasn't a, example of Purdue not stepping on the throat or, not playing their greatest. Like Ohio State they played to some of their potential that they've had at times this season. It's just hard to consistently do that. And that's why it's, harder to win the regular season in the Big Ten than it is the tournament because anybody can get hot for 1 or 2 games in the tournament or something and try to make a run, but to do it over the course of the season and constantly prove it, that's hard to do. And it's also hard to fend off people every night of the season when they're always giving you their best shot. So I feel like that falls under the category of, we've talked about it before, people always being upset by how much we win by or how we win, not the fact that we won.
If Purdue doesn't win by 30, it's a sham.
Yeah. Well, we won more games this regular season than any other season in the Painter, and
Right.
people are still complaining about how we won or how many. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we got a comment here from Tar Heels for Life. So UNC fan hopping into the live stream here tonight, which is pretty cool. So you
must
guys
not have watched much Big Ten basketball last year.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Zach Edey and Hunter Dickinson know each other well. They played against each other for 3 seasons before he went to Kansas. But yeah, it'd be really fun. I mean, Hunter Dickinson has been a thorn in Purdue's side due to his ability to step out and shoot, and Zach Edey's been a thorn in Hunter Dickinson's side. So yeah, that would be a really good game. There's a comment here: the Boilers need more points from the bench. So just out of curiosity, so we're going to talk about per game here. Could either of you guess how many bench points Purdue averages per game? So how many points do bench players score per game?
12.
I would say it might be single digits because there's a lot of games where it was like 2 or 4.
Damon, what do you think?
12.
12? Okay. So it's actually 18.7, but
okay.
That's average, right? Is not necessarily the best way to look at that, because when you think about all the times where Purdue gets a big lead against maybe not a great team and that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna see if I can break that down per game.
Take out all the Bergs points this season.
Yeah. Let's see. So we had 13 bench points against Wisconsin, 17 against Michigan State. I'm going backwards here. 11 senior night, 10 against Illinois, 7 against Michigan State at home, 10, 37 against Rutgers. So see, that's going to skew that number upward. It's going to, but 37 bench points. Heidi had what was perfect from the floor.
18. Yep, that was the 18-point game from Heidi against Rutgers.
Michigan at home, they had 34. And then 43 against the Jacksonville Dolphins, as we all remember, that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful team. So it's a comment here in reference to UConn's dominance. I mean, I think that UConn has, A is a really good team. B, we saw, as we said, only 3 teams from the Big East got in. So there's question as to whether or not they've played a tough schedule. I know their non-con, they played, I think they've played like 10 or 11 Q4 games. But they played several teams in their non-con who were KenPom 300. Purdue did not play a single KenPom 300 plus team all season. Now I understand that 2 of those are DePaul, and you can only play who's in your conference, so I'll let that one slide. But the dominance, so to speak, of UConn at least partially can be attributed to who they've played, and the lack of like I said, only three teams from their league made the tournament, which is just saying something about how the caliber. I mean, the Big East, is very top heavy. Creighton and Marquette are both very good teams, but no one else got in outside of that. So, I mean, UConn looks good. They look like the team to beat, but there are 20 teams that could realistically see winning this.
Gotta just one game at a time. That's all we gotta do. Just beat the team in front of us and go ahead.
Sorry. I got that. I got a little bit of lag on my end. Thanks to the hotel. But I also want to point out, and I point out it a few times, UConn's run last year was not remarkable. Like, they were dominant. Yes, they won by a lot of games. Yes, but they didn't play a 1 seed. They didn't play a single 2 seed. And the only 3 seed that they played was Gonzaga. And Timmy only played like 20-something minutes because he was in foul trouble that game. So they didn't play a really, really, really rigorous schedule last year, even to win the NCAA tournament, which I'm not saying they're not deserving, but like, it's not like you said, Frank. You got to look at their opponents as well. Like, you're going to look dominant if Purdue loaded their schedule with 200 plus teams in KenPom. Yeah, we'd look a lot more dominant than what we did, but we still went 29-4.
Mm-hmm. And then Shan brings up a point here. It says, in fairness, Purdue's bench doesn't score a lot because Purdue has the number 1 scorer in the country on their team, and he plays 35 minutes a game. So, I mean, yeah, there's some merit to that for sure. And then I think a lot of our other points comes from, Braden Fletch, mostly the starters. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. That and I think the vast majority of Purdue's bench players, outside of maybe one or two, could come in and score 20 points if we needed them to. I won't name any names here, but there are several players, some maybe not, who if we needed them to come in and score 20, like if that were asked of them, um, that could certainly happen. Painters talked about how unfair it is that a lot of the players, their value is centered around how they coexist with Zach Edey, right? So they it's like how can you be on the court with Zach Edey at the same time? And that's where your value is. That's not necessarily fair, but when he is as good as he is and as dominant as he is, and gets all the calls and gets away with fouls and elbows guys in the face and stuff, and the refs never call it. I mean, why would you do anything different? So that's just that's my 2 cents. Think we can sneak Jaden Ivey in a uniform when we play in Detroit? Interesting comment here. Yeah, no, that'd be great.
Maybe
as long as he gets back on defense,
right?
As long as he promises to not argue with refs.
Yeah, and he doesn't just stand there and like this when he doesn't get a call and then not go. Yeah. Anyway,
but that call has gone away in the NBA in the last month. I don't know if you all have heard that or not, but
in the last month they can change the rules mid-season.
Well, they've changed how they're officiating the game in the last since the All-Star break. The scoring's way down because the number of their defensive fouls at the rim and whatnot is going down drastically. So, yeah.
Let's see. So, unfortunately, next Friday, which Detroit is also a Friday, Sunday site, if we make it that far. And next Friday, the Pistons are on the road against the Washington Wizards. And then that following Sunday, they're off the following Sunday. So maybe that Sunday he'll be at that game if we make the Elite Eight.
So interesting comment here. Hypothetically, if we make it to a Final Four, do you think there will be chatter about how we got an easy draw?
I don't care.
I don't care, but B, yes, I do, because here we are sitting about talking about how UConn had an easy path last season. But yeah, I mean, it for some reason Purdue.
Well, we are. The national media wouldn't want to talk bad about UConn's draw.
For some reason, it just seems like people love to doubt Purdue. People love to like it. Again, it was spun as if it was a positive thing that Illinois came back from being down double digits in every game in the Big Ten tournament. I just can't help but feel like, and this is pure speculation, that if it were Purdue, it would be, Purdue's sputtering again. They got down 10 points to Ohio State and had to eke out a win at the end. I mean, it just, it just seems like there's a lot of, doubt in the media and whatnot. So yes, to long-winded answer to say yes, I completely think that will be a narrative that gets spun. And another comment here, there will be talk of, well, if you didn't have Edey and the whistles. Yeah, agreed. And that's, the Nuggets wouldn't have won the NBA championship last year without Jokic. I mean, that's like, you could say that about lots of teams and individual
my
players.
answer to that hypothetical question would be what we talked about in our thread was, if we win the whole thing, people will make up excuses or arguments to say, like I live in Jeffersonville, Indiana. We both live in that area, Frank. There's 3 fan bases within a few hours that would all say, well, call me when you get 3, call me when you get 4, call me when you get however many. And even if they didn't have multiple, they'd say, well, let me know when you win one without Edey. Let me know when you win one without the rest. Like it's no matter what, no other fan base is going to respect Purdue the way we respect Purdue. Like no other fan base is going to respect your team, no matter what your team is, the way you do.
I tell you what, though, I guarantee if Purdue wins the national championship, at least I will. I'm going to become the most toxic person of all time. Just anytime, Purdue loses a game. Oh, what? National champion? What was that? National champions? Yeah. Like
I can't.
Oh my God.
I can't imagine myself doing that, but it'll just be nice. It'll be nice to have witnessed that. I don't know. It seems like it'll ease the anxiety of every game, knowing that like, hey, we at least
would be really cool is if they did like a watch party at Ross Aid where people could sit, because I know people are if anybody's watching this and they're obsessed with the turf as much as the next person that's a Purdue fan, I'm not saying people would sit on the field and watch the game, but if they sat in the stands and like watched the game on the like Final Four on the big jumbotron in the national championship, that'd be really cool, and I would go to
Yeah.
that because that'd be a lot of fun.
I think Mackey's more realistic because that still seats like 12,000, 13,000. So if you get more than that, that'd be impressive. But
Have either of you looked at tickets?
Very briefly I looked at like Friday, but I didn't know, like I know that for Friday for all the sessions, right as soon as the selection Sunday happened, was like $400 for all the sessions.
Yeah, they were they're fairly pricey.
Meanwhile, they're giving away tickets to the Memphis first and second round games to like veterans because they can't get people to buy those tickets.
So let's look at potential matchups here. Let's talk about that. So I'm gonna pull this up here, and can you guys see this?
I'm on my phone, so like I'm squinting like this for everything. So
Russ, what about you?
You're really challenging this hotel Wi-Fi, but yeah, I can see it.
Okay, all right. So Purdue, as we know, will play the winner of Grambling State and Montana State. Don't know how much
you all. Seeing this correctly, it looks like Purdue's got a bye.
Yeah, well, I mean that's because, as we see down here, these two teams have yet to play. They play tomorrow. Don't know how much you all know about either one of these teams or how much you've looked into them. But is there a team you'd rather play?
I saw that there were two of the bottom four teams according to KenPom in the tournament.
They are both KenPom 250. One's like 251, the other is 276 as of yesterday. Grambling is the worst ranked of the two. So KenPom predicts a 2-point win to Montana State. But for context here, this is the equivalent. So I'm going to put some actual numbers to this. So Purdue played, trying to think who the closest, or look who the close. So Texas Southern. This is roughly, so when Purdue played Texas Southern earlier this season, they won 99-67. This is effectively playing Texas Southern again. Either one of these teams in that ballpark.
Grambling is closer to Jacksonville.
Yes, the Jacksonville Dolphins. Yeah. So, definitely a game that we would be expected to win by, I'm going to say 18 to 22 points.
Yeah, I would love a comfortable first round game. That would be lovely.
Yeah. But I read an article today, and I swear every media person is going to be the first person to predict the upset, but saying that out of all the 116 matchups, the one to keep an eye on is Purdue and what they had already assumed was going to be Montana State. And that I forget who it was. It was someone I'd never heard of. They had already had Montana State as the winner, and they said their lights out shooting ability and quick athletic guards have the recipe to upset Purdue and give Purdue problems. I did watch one of their games, and they run a lot of 5-out offense. They don't really seem to have like a rhyme or reason around like when they shoot. They just take a lot of contested threes. Interestingly, they're one of the worst rebounding teams in the country. They're in the first percentile in rebounding, offensively and defensively. So I just think that that's a matchup nightmare for them. Just as much. So if they can't rebound the ball, but they turn the ball over a lot offensively. When they don't turn the ball over, they actually shoot fairly decently from an efficiency standpoint. But if this is a game Purdue drops, I mean, Purdue doesn't just we're not even gonna talk about that. So don't know how much Utah State or TCU you all have watched this season. I did this morning run 10,000 simulations against Purdue in both of these teams, and they were both fairly equal. So Purdue won 84% against Utah State and 83% against TCU. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how much of these teams you all have watched, but between the two, who would you rather play?
Yeah, I'm just gonna take a shot in the dark here and just say TCU. Which TCU's had some good wins this year, because didn't they beat Arizona this year?
Let's see. Let's go through there. schedule. And so to answer the comment here, you did a Monte Carlo fancy. I did. I have my own rankings that are kind of similar to KenPom, and so I use those rankings to get a rough estimation of what could happen. And just something I stood up last week and been doing for a little while now. But looking at TCU, so notable wins. They did beat Houston. 68-67. They eked out a win. They beat Baylor in overtime. They beat Texas Tech. They beat Cincinnati, who ended up making a run in their tournament. They did lose to Houston 60-45 in the Big 12 tournament. Losses. They did lose to Clemson. Not a bad loss by any means. They lost to Nevada, another tournament team. They lost to Kansas by 2. They lost to Iowa State by 1. So, definitely a team that's been battle tested. Really weak non-con, honestly, as a whole. Lot of KenPom 300s up there. Southern, Nebraska, Omaha, Mississippi Valley State, Houston Christian. They beat Georgetown by 1, so that's kind of a red flag. But it's all about how you finish the season, right? How you're playing down the stretch. Well, they are 2 for 6 to finish the regular season.
Okay.
So with losses to Texas Tech, Baylor, BYU, and UCF.
Tell you what, that doesn't matter, Frank, and that's the beginning of the season. Nobody cares about November and December. That's right.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. But.
Yeah, so given kind of what you said there too, and just to be devil's advocate, I would actually say Utah State is the team I'd prefer, just because the Mountain West has not been great in the tournament of late. I heard a statement the other day, and I didn't completely fact check it, but I tried to find exceptions. I could not find any. They said that the Mountain West Conference, outside of San Diego State's run last year, since 2019, they're 0-19 in the NCAA tournament.
Oh, wow.
So if
I'll have to look into that.
If they can manage to break that cycle and beat TCU, I think that, Utah State lost to Bradley.
They did, yeah.
So I think that would be the quote unquote the easier matchup. But similar to the 16 play-in game, you're still playing a team that won a game. So even if you think you're getting the easier opponent, well, that means they beat the team that you thought was the harder opponent, and now they're playing you. So, it's at the end of the day, it will play who we have to play, and we got to be better than them on that day, on that court.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, no, Russ, I'm with you in that I'd rather play Utah State. I mean, just looking at their schedule, this has been a controversial team, right, in terms of whether they got in or are they overseeded. But yeah, I mean, their first game was against a non-D1 opponent, and then their second game, the first game against a D1 opponent, they lost to Bradley by 8 points. So, not a great loss there. So they've actually played 2 non-D1 opponents. So that 27-6 record. I mean, 2 of those are against non-D1 opponents. They did lose to New Mexico. They lost to San Diego State. They lost to Nevada. They lost to Colorado State. So none of their losses are bad. But looking at their wins in KenPom, they don't have a ton of really impressive wins. I mean, they eked out a win at the end of the season against New Mexico, who's KenPom 23. They did get a convincing win over San Diego State by 5. They beat Boise State in overtime, but I mean, nothing sticks out to me as this team's been battle tested. I mean, one thing that sticks out as I look at their numbers is they're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the country. They're ranked 268th, so in the bottom sector there. But defensively, they're one of the best teams in terms of allowing the least percentage from 3. So they only allow their opponents to shoot 29% from 3. Fascinating how they can not shoot the ball well, but stop their opponents from shooting the ball well. I just think that'd be an interesting matchup. So I mean, not a single player on their roster shooting over 40% from 3. The player who's taken the most threes is 38%, so not far off. But they just look really interesting, on paper. But yeah, I think I would rather play. I would rather play Utah State if I had a choice. I mean, they're 58th in KenPom compared to what was TCU 30th. There's something around there.
Okay, gotcha.
33rd, yeah. So that's my case there. So we have a comment: TCU in the Big 12 with Kansas State, Iowa currently being Kansas State by 11. Yeah. On to other teams we could play. Gonzaga, Purdue's already played them once. They kind of hit a little bit of a lull in the middle of the season and then kind of got things back on track. But how would you all feel about a rematch with Gonzaga?
Yeah. Honestly, I think I would rather play Kansas. If Kansas can eke it out to the Sweet 16 with all the injuries that they've got going on. I think I'd rather play Kansas. I would love to punch our ticket to the Elite Eight by beating a team with Hunter Dickinson on it. I think that would just be fantastic. And also Bill Self losing in the tournament and being the person to hand it, or being the team to hand him that loss, would be just great. It'd be icing on the cake.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people are taking McNeese from what I understand in this game, but that would be great if they beat Gonzaga, because I would rather play them over Gonzaga. But that's an interesting take. You'd rather play Kansas. Kevin McCullough Jr. is out, as we've talked about earlier tonight, and then Hunter Dickinson sounds like he's far from 100%. So. And Kansas is a team that their biggest problem has been depth this season. That their starting five has been great. Their bench has been questionable this season, but I think that's going to be a huge blow to that Kansas team. Johnny Furphy can't carry all that himself, but right. Yeah, I mean, either one of I have a ton of respect for both these teams, and they both would be a grinder of a game. But I think I'm going to agree with you there. I'd rather play Kansas. What do you think, Russ?
Yeah, I'd rather play Samford.
Yeah, imagine if we did play Samford and they did the tip off like they did at the season opener with the little guy going against Zach Edey again. That'd be awesome.
No, I mean, I'm going to change gears a little bit and do it from a redemptive standpoint, because, like I said, I think it just comes down to whoever you play is going to have, and Painter's talked about this, some sort of championship caliber to them. Like, especially the lower teams, they've still won their tournament, their conference tournament. And these teams that are at large, they've, proven that they're one of the best teams in the country because they got in without even winning their tournament. So, I want to see redemption, I want to see us beat TCU, because they're like the Texas big Purdue, right? Like everybody's showing the pictures of like Ross-Ade versus their football stadium and Mackey versus their basketball stadium. So let's go ahead and knock them off. Let's play Kansas and beat those demons that Painter's talked about for years, and that Kansas game in the tournament so many years back. Let's beat Tennessee again and on our way to Final Four, and let's do that. Let's do TCU, Kansas, and then Tennessee. That's what I want to see.
That'd be nuts.
Man, you seem a lot more apt to play Tennessee than I am, honestly.
I mean, I want to see Purdue win. Yeah, maybe don't want to see Tennessee, because Tennessee stands the best chance of, obviously the 2 seed in our bracket, the best chance to beat us. But from a redemptive standpoint, like if I'm saying, hey, in my dream world, what's our path to the Final Four look like? Who have we beat along the way? That's what I put in our way.
So talking Elite Eight here and options, Creighton, certainly an option. Tennessee, definitely realistic option. Virginia, Colorado, currently playing, right? Colorado State, currently playing. I don't know the score of that game. It would seem to me that Virginia would win that game, but who knows? I mean, Colorado State's not a bad team, but as I checked the score, 27-14 Colorado State at halftime.
Wow.
So might actually be Colorado State at halftime. Yeah. Virginia basketball, right?
Wow.
Virginia basketball. I think that
Colorado State's underrated.
Colorado State is underrated. I am more confident in Virginia's ability to beat Texas.
Points.
I think I'm more confident in Virginia's ability to beat Texas than Colorado State's ability to beat Texas, just for a matchup reason. And thank you, Mr. Stillwagon, for the comments here. So Virginia didn't score in the final 9 minutes.
Wow,
fascinating.
Yeah. Colorado State missed a couple extra points there, it looks like.
Yeah.
That's insane.
That was subtle, Russ. I liked it. Yeah, the football score, but yeah, I mean, so I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that there's a pretty good chance that this bottom portion of the bracket turns out to be Creighton and Tennessee, right? In the
Really?
Sweet 16.
Really?
Who Who are you?
Well, I was just going to say, not necessarily anybody in particular, but I just think the bottom half of the bracket could chew itself up a little bit. Oregon has shown itself to be, they made Sweet 16s before as a double-digit seed.
Yep.
South Carolina is underrated as a team out of the SEC. They've won some big games in the SEC. So if the SEC is for real, they could be a contender. Akron, I believe, has pulled an upset or two in the tournament before. Tennessee, Rick Barnes, it's well documented his struggles in the postseason. So, I think the bottom half of the bracket.
That's not true. Matt Painter is the only coach that struggles in March for us. You can't
Brad
say
Underwood.
Touche.
Brad Underwood.
No, Brad Underwood's the elite. Illinois is just as good as Purdue, if not better. They've shown themselves to be the better Big Ten team in recent years, even though people don't think they are.
So what Russ is referring to, or part of what Russ is referring to, is you can go check this on Twitter. The Illinois basketball Twitter put out a tweet yesterday. Sorry, it's not a tweet anymore. It's a post. They put a post out yesterday that said Brad Underwood has more wins against Big Ten teams than any other coach over the last 5 seasons, right? Wasn't it? Mm-hmm. I think it was 5 seasons. Yeah. But if you go back 2 seasons, if you go back 3 seasons, or if you go back beyond that, that is no longer true. So they chose an amount of time. Well, so the comment here said they said 4. I think they crossed it out and had
yes, that's what I say. The funny part about that is that they actually even crossed out the 4 because the 4 isn't true.
Yeah. So, but if you go back further, that statement's no longer true. And if you go back sooner, right, and you go back 2 seasons, 3 seasons, it's also no longer true. So it's yeah. So Mr. Stillwagon here, I appreciate all the research you've done in helping us out here. But Purdue has the most in 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. So they literally cherry picked.
For those that are wondering, the reason it stops at 7 is because Underwood's been at Illinois for 7 years. So that's any point in the last 7 years, there's only one frame that he's beat us.
Yeah, but no, I'm being very genuine. I appreciate these numbers you're providing here because Purdue has the most 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So yeah, you picked up exactly what we were getting at here, and that's a very cherry picked number. Not saying it's not right, because it is right. So there's nothing factually incorrect about that at all. I just thought that was a really interesting thing to do. It's very I don't know, it's almost like something would do in a political campaign, just it's really, really odd. So when you're having to scrape like that for, I don't what does that say?
It's it reminds me of that Penn State graphic. Was it for football last year? That was it said something. It was in huge font that they did some feat, and then in very small letters under it in parentheses was it said the outlier, which kind of it went against the statement itself. But that's kind of what that reminds me of. But honestly, this whole talk about the tournament, obviously it's really fun to talk about the tournament. Everybody's excited about it. But last year, if last year shows anything, it's a crapshoot. Florida Atlantic, Miami came literally out of nowhere and made it to the Final Four. I think, was it only a one seed last year that made it to the Final Four?
No, 1, 2, no, 1, 2, or 3 seed. The 4 seed was the highest seed that made the NCAA tournament.
And that was UConn, right?
Yeah.
So comments here about Oregon and Oregon down the stretch. So they finished their season beating Utah by 1, beating UCLA in the Pac-12 tournament, beating Arizona convincingly in the Pac-12 tournament, and beating Colorado fairly convincingly as well. The Oregon looks good, right, to finish off the season, at least on paper. Earlier in the season they had some tough losses, but there's definitely we shouldn't count out Oregon by any means. But Russ, how do you feel about Texas? Do you have a pulse on Texas?
Texas, honestly, Texas and TCU are fairly similar, right? They're both Big 12 teams that have shown the ability to win big games, but also not played up for some of the lower games. So that's why another reason why I wouldn't necessarily want to see TCU in the second round, because they're kind of volatile. If they put it together, they can get it done, but they aren't anywhere near consistent enough to get obviously a better than a 7 or an 8 seed.
Yeah, the game for me that sticks out in my mind for Texas is the 1-point win on a neutral site against Louisville, right? That was, That was a very eyebrow raising game for me. But they
Well,
do
Louisville's a
have,
blue blood. They're going to get Mark Few from Gonzaga. So
or Scott Drew from Baylor, actually. That's what I heard. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean they have wins over Texas Tech, right? Wins over Oklahoma, Cincinnati, Baylor, LSU, just to point out some of the more notable ones. Cincinnati again. The losses, BYU, UCF, West Virginia, that's a tough loss this season. But they're kind of all over the place. When I watch them play, there's very little offense. I mean, there's offense in the sense that like they're shooting the basketball, but there's very little like creation. They're just kind of running around, and it's usually Max A. Smith like puts a shot up there. There's nothing pretty about their offense. And speaking of him, he's kind of their star player. Plays 87% of the minutes, but I think that he's really the guy you have to stop. And then losing Dylan Dessou, when he went down against Houston, that was a tough loss. But yeah, I mean they're kind of a wild card. When I look at the the field, because of that volatility you talked about, they're a team that I could see beating Tennessee. Let's say, they're just they when they're up, they're up, and when they're down, and they could just catch Tennessee and on a night where they're on an upswing. And I see that as the biggest team that could throw a wrench into everything.
Which, how about that narrative? Tennessee versus Texas. Rick Barnes.
Yeah, for his old stomping ground. Yeah, that'd be a really interesting one. Just don't do horns down. We all know they don't like that. If they lose, they are very sensitive to that. So,
or how about Nebraska and Texas A&M being scheduled in both the men and women's tournament to play each other, and then the Nebraska AD just got hired at Texas A&M.
Yeah, that's just poetic justice, right? Is it not? It's a comment here. Brad Underwood. Brad Underwood also hasn't taken any team he's head coach to a second weekend. That is true. He hasn't been to the tournament nearly as many times as some other coaches, but yeah, he hasn't gotten out of the.
Despite having 7 less Big Ten wins than Painter over the last 2 years, he's a better coach, and they're going to be the better team in the end. It's going to happen.
Yeah, their potential second game is tough. It really is tough. In my opinion, it's going to be a tough game for them. Drake and Washington State's going to be a really, really tough, really close game. And but then Duquesne and BYU. I mean, BYU has the genetic makeup to give Illinois problems because they can just light it up from outside. They have like 6 guys who can just light it up from 3. Defense hasn't really been Illinois' strength this season. It's been their offense. So I think how you beat Illinois is you just outscore them. So I think that BYU could be the team to do that. But obviously I cheer for the Big Ten in the tournament, so I don't want to see that happen, but it could. So
you don't want to see Illinois lose?
No, not in the tournament. I like the Big Ten's record in the tournament in the last 3-4 seasons is abysmal. So I would love to see a Big Ten team. Just
how about Purdue?
Here's why it's hard for me to root for the other Big Ten teams, especially this year, is look at the way they've talked about Purdue this season. Okay. And as soon as Purdue has any kind of success, if and when it happens, they're going to claim Purdue as, oh, look, the Big Ten did it. See, look, they're our team. And it's going to be like, no. Like, we heard everything that was said this year. We heard the coaches. We heard the tweets. We heard the players. Like, no. Like, you're not going to claim Purdue like we're part of y'all when you guys were, saying Painter doesn't deserve Coach of the Year and Edey gets all the calls and Braden's not even as good as Xavier Johnson. Like, no. Like,
well, and my thing with not just rooting for the Big Ten as a whole is that there's some programs and schools in the Big Ten they're just do some really crummy, underhanded, dirty stuff and pull things under the rug. Like Michigan State has a terrible track record in their athletic department. I mean, just with all of the scandals and things that they've had going on. Michigan has. I know they fired Juwan Howard, but I just think there's. I don't know. I don't feel a need to root for the Big Ten. I really just care about how Purdue's going to do, and that's it. Of course, it makes the conference look better if the other teams do well, but I don't think that you have to root for the Big Ten as a whole.
I'll
So
give
there's
you one Big Ten team I will root for, and that's Nebraska. I hope
Oh
Nebraska
yeah,
does well.
yeah,
I'm going to root for them to go as far
yeah.
as possible.
Yeah, that is true. I love Tominaga, and it's so weird to me how like just now, like the after the Big Ten tournament where he had that crazy first half, and I mean the whole game was really good against IU, but it's just now I'm seeing the Japanese Steph Curry. You guys got to check this guy out. Like he's been some
Yeah, there was a
secret.
special on ESPN today. I saw they had the ESPN on at work, and they like talked about him for like 10 straight minutes. I'm like, yeah, I've
He's
been
been doing
watching
this
this
all
kid for
year.
a while. Like I'm watching this kid for years. Like it's just they're just now getting hip to him. But there's a comment here I want to ask you guys here. Do you guys feel our fan base has devolved over the past 2 seasons? Are the haters turning us against each other?
I would disagree. I've talked about it a little bit before getting into it with Sonny that our fan base has actually kind of stepped up a little bit and defended Painter and defended the team a little bit this year more than they have in past. Now, you still have got the people that we don't win by enough, or Painter's got to do it in March. Until then, I won't be happy. But a lot of the stuff that's come out when people come after Edie or come after this team this year, I've seen a lot more people defending the team than I have seen in the year past.
Well, I think that like we tend to nitpick over small things like internally. So like Russ, we talked about it earlier and how people seem to be split about whether or not Braden should be should have played in the Big Ten tournament at all. And Damon said he saw some people saying like if you think Braden shouldn't play, then you're soft and like stuff like that. But I don't necessarily feel like it's to an extent that we haven't seen in the past, but one thing it's for sure is the hate seems stronger than ever. Right? The disrespect seems stronger than ever. That's something I can
And I just
say
think
with certainty.
I don't think that we're like going against each other. I think Purdue fans as a whole need to just like I think this is just new territory for us to be kind of in this national spotlight consistently that we've been in for the last couple of years. Because anytime another fan base says anything about Purdue, I mean the quote tweets or the quote posts and the everything. Everybody just goes wild about it. Like, oh, I can't believe you would say that about Purdue. We are an established program of good young men and honor and integrity and blah blah blah. And it's like people are gonna talk. I mean, everybody hates Alabama football. That's just part of it, So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
feel
I
like
think they hate Alabama because they've won a lot of championships and they're always good. It's maybe Purdue's just entered that we're always good. I guess I don't know. Are we always good? I mean, how many down years have we had in the last 6-7 seasons? One.
yeah, 2020, right?
Yeah, one. I mean, that's really it. So yeah, it could just be that. It could just be the the fact that we're perennially a good team, except for postseason.
And guys, we are at the hour and almost 20-minute mark. So I mean, we can go through the rest of the bracket if you guys want to, or we can kind of give our final thoughts here, or we can just keep it rolling. What do you guys want to do?
No, let's go ahead and kind of wrap things up. It's been awesome to have all this listener engagement, the comments, the questions. Love that stuff because we kind of just hopped on and said, oh, we'll just talk about things. But all the comments and stuff has led to some really good conversation and things to talk about. So very much appreciated from
Dylan's obviously running the pod Twitter tonight.
Yeah, just ignore that. Yeah, so
Sold. That's right.
yeah. Said thanks for being on. Needed some Purdue only talk. Amen. Yeah, we definitely need some of that, and some positive Purdue only talk. It's just all on ESPN today. It's like, can Purdue exercise their March demons, and can Purdue get over the hump, and can Purdue finally make a run? I'm just like, oh.
You guys think we should go live like 30 minutes before the game on Friday and just see where everybody's like get the pulse for where everybody's at?
Coach Painter is
as the game's about to start, it's gonna be interesting.
Here's a Coach Painter, a basketball guru that has a great class coming in. Yeah, he does. Yeah. Yeah, so comment here if y'all want to watch game in Louisville, let me know. Didn't realize y'all were local. Yeah, Russ and I live in the Louisville area. Hit us up on.
Well, I'm local. If you like consider 3 hours, radius local, I'll head out.
Yeah. yeah, so yeah, get a hold of us on Twitter, and yeah, be happy to do that. Yeah, we're always looking for Purdue, connected with Purdue fans, especially locally. Not a
All
ton
right,
of us
boys.
here, so.
Final thoughts here. We'll go ahead and start with you, Frank. What are your final thoughts going into Friday?
Final thoughts. Just in like enjoy this team. Regardless of what happens, that we're watching a generational player. With the era of the transfer portal coming in, with NIL, it's very unlikely we're going to see a guy ever break Edie's records, rebounds, points, and just don't lose sight of that. It's like the best thing I can say. Like, just realize that we're watching an elite team, and understand that the NCAA tournament is
The crap
is
shoot.
fun. It's rough. It can break your heart. It can be the coolest moment of your life. But in reality, it comes down to some luck, and that's ultimately what it is. And it's a lucky event that I very much want to see Purdue win. But life goes on, right? It's easy to think that like, it's like woe is me. Like, how could this happen? But you know, my loyalty will never be wavered regardless of what happens. But let's win it, man. Let's just go win it all. you know Final
All right,
thoughts.
Russ, what do you got for me?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we're playing on Friday. So Purdue fans go watch games on Thursday, enjoy the tournament, take in the basketball, keep everything in perspective. If we win, people are going to respect us still. If we lose, I mean, the tournament's a crapshoot, right? Like you saw in conference tournaments this year, what it was like 18, 19, 20, something out of 32 one seeds didn't win the tournament. That shows like, what do you think is a better barometer of the better team? The team that wins a regular season championship or a 3-day tournament? So it's not even the NCAA tournament, like we've said before, is not a barometer of who the best team in the country is on the course of the season. It's who can get hot for a course of a few weekends. Now, yes, we want to see them do well, but just keep things in perspective. Enjoy the game. March Madness is the greatest, sporting event, multi-site sporting event in the world. So enjoy it. Watch games on Thursday. Watch games leading up to the game Friday night, and just enjoy, like Frank said, enjoy watching this team because no matter what, we've only got at most a month more to watch this team as it's composed now, and then it's going to look completely different next year and moving forward. So just enjoy it. Enjoy everything about the tournament and about Purdue right now.
Enjoy it, but God, I hope we win. Oh, I'm so emotional. Like, there's just so many, and I know this is probably the same for a lot of people. There's so many just deep, strong emotions because we have all said this in one way or another. You are not a Purdue fan because and maybe that'll start happening now based off of Purdue's recent success, but you're not a Purdue fan because you just decided to look up a college basketball team one day and pick Purdue. You went to school at Purdue, your family went to Purdue, you were born into it. It is a family. And as cheesy as that sounds, it's a family. It's a brotherhood. It's a sisterhood. It goes so much deeper than just like, oh, the Tar Heels are playing. Like, oh, let's turn on the game and not pay attention to it. The whole time or whatever.
No
But
offense
it's
to our Tar Heel friends who are watching.
but like, there's just so many casual fans for these schools that have had this storied success over and over for a year. I mean, decades and decades. And if you're a Purdue fan, you have deep ties, whether it's you went to Purdue, whether your family went to Purdue. Like, for me, it's super emotional because my grandpa went to Purdue. He is the person that got me into Purdue sports. He's had season tickets for football since '85. Um, great guy, and he is a lot older now, and so there's always those things in the back of my mind. It's like, not only my grandpa, that's just my personal thing, is Coach Katie. Everybody wants Coach Katie to see another Final Four, a championship for Purdue. It just runs so deep. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it because you just think of all the, and I mean, you watch that Whatever It Takes video that Purdue creative made, and it's just, gosh, you just want it for the guys so bad. You want it for all the blood, sweat, and tears. You want it so that everybody will shut up at least for a day. that Purdue did it. They finally did it. That Braden Smith is one of the most elite point guards in Purdue basketball history and NCAA history, or at least in the NCAA this last year. So there's just so much emotion behind it. You just want it so bad, and you know that how bad you want it. Multiply that by probably 10, and that's where the team is at, where Coach Painter's probably at. And Coach Painter's a very even keel guy, but yeah, I mean, it's just yeah, you just want it so bad. You want it for these guys. They deserve it. And I'm sure there's lots of teams and fans of teams right now all sitting around this week saying the same thing, but it just feels different with Purdue. It feels like it would just mean more. Um, just absolutely incredible. So, yeah, I hope that Purdue wins it. And if you guys want to check out the statistics on the teams that are going to be playing in the tournament, that future opponents, you can check out our sponsorship. You can check out College Basketball Analytics. They've got great information on there. So you can check out our future opponents, kind of get the lowdown on the analytics and the numbers, and see where Purdue measures up against possibly some future opponents, whether that's Montana State or Grambling State. They play Thursday night, so we'll play the winner of that game. And then while you're checking out the analytics, pop over to martinvintage.com as well. Get yourself a nice Purdue shirt. You got to have a new shirt for the tournament, right? You can't just wear the old same raggedy T-shirt that you've had since 2007. So you to use code BXP at checkout for that as well. And then, while you're doing that, after Purdue wins in the first weekend, you're going to have to plan out your trip to the Sweet 16. And then you're going to have to buy a Blitz board so that you can tailgate and have a great time with your friends and family. So go over on the Cincy Blitz boards on Twitter. I'm not 100% sure if they have their website up yet or not, but absolutely incredible quality. And if you're not a Purdue fan and you're watching this, they will make you any team professional. Maybe you want to get Purdue hurling. Maybe you want to get a Purdue hurling blitz board and get that done. They just beat the 4-time national champion team to make it to the finals. So I'm just blabbering on because I'm just all over the place, guys. So I apologize if you're listening to this, but so excited. I mean, it's going to be a great week. It will be a great week, and then we're going to come out at the end of this weekend, and we're going to be talking about next week because we're going to be playing in the Sweet 16. So boiler up, guys. Let's go and beat the winner of the Montana State and Grambling State game, and just take it one game at a time. That's all we can do, and just enjoy every minute of it. So boiler up.
Bowler up.
Let's do it.